What's up, guys? I'm Sunny. Today we are going to be doing episode 3 of the Cloud Gaming Unfiltered podcast. Today we are braving a subject that is on the minds of pretty much everybody, at least as of today's date. That is what is going on with Stadia, where the big games, and in general, the unhappiness that a lot of people are feeling with Stadia up to this point here in 2022. This might be the biggest episode of the year, so I'm excited, and that's why we're not taking any questions like I do on my normal format. We are going to tackle just this subject and nothing else because I feel this deserves its own episode. If you guys want to support the channel, go ahead and become a YouTube member by hitting that join button. You guys will get early access to these episodes as well as my Patreon. Okay, so here we are, guys. We are in 2022. Let me set the stage. Because who knows when you guys are listening to this. We are about to hit June 1st, and we have seen very few Stadia games. I do want to mention for the record, I have some pretty much exclusive info that not a lot of people know about, and it's not public, so stay tuned for that here in a second. But again, we are now about to hit June. We've seen very little AAA games. I do count Rainbow Six Extraction as one, but outside of that, we had Dynasty Warriors, but there's been really nothing else. And a lot of people are wondering what the heck is going on. Within the last, I want to say, really the last 6 months, but it has been intensified the last 3 months. In my comments, in my videos, which is where I gauge a lot of where the community feels and what the sentiment of what's going on within you guys. And there's tons of people displeased. I'll go ahead and just throw a couple comments up on the screen. There is tons of these types of comments that I am now getting on every single video. They are bombarded. And, you know, I'm just the messenger. I'm just relaying what's being announced and explaining. Like, for me, I just want to talk about what the games are about, even if it's not like the greatest game, because there's going to be some people who are interested and they're just not going to comment like, yeah, I'm really interested. I want to hear about this. So I get that, you know, a lot of people are very upset, and I don't blame anyone. I want to say that for the record. If you all have been very not happy with what's been going on with Stadia the past 6 months, the past year, the past 2 years, you are absolutely in your right, especially if you have invested money into Stadia. You are absolutely within your right to be upset. And as I always tell everybody, and I've been saying this for a long time now, you vote with your wallet. And honestly, it sounds like a lot of you have literally been doing that. By just judging by the comments I'm getting, I have gotten so many comments of people just saying they have canceled Stadia Pro, they're no longer using Stadia, or they've moved on and bought an Xbox Series S. That's like the biggest one I always tend to see. And again, I don't blame you guys. I totally get it. But I'm here in this podcast today going to explain what I think is going on. And I think it's significant because if you look at the timeline of how things have happened since back in 2021, early 2021, when they announced they closed Stadia Games and Entertainment, you can kind of see a lot of that and what's been happening. And even this year, a lot of people are wondering if Stadia is going to hit the 100 games here in 2022. And I've been on the record, I'm still going to be on the record in saying that I would be extremely shocked if 100 games are not released this year. The quality and what those games are, that's a whole nother question. And that's something that's, I think, going to be talked about and debated the rest of the year, including myself. And another thing that I've been on record on saying is, out of all the years that I have now been covering Stadia now since 2019, I have never been more blind as to what's going on behind the scenes and what games we're going to see. I have had an idea of certain games that were going to come out that not everyone else knew about. This is the year, and especially going forward past this year, I'm almost as blind as you guys. Maybe I know a tiny bit, a little bit of something, but not much. So it's been fascinating even on my end to see how this is all playing out. So let's talk about what I actually think is going on and what Stadia's future is going to hold. So we're going to set the stage very quickly here. Again, back in 2021, Stadia Games and Entertainment closed. Months later after that, we started to hear about changes on how Stadia is going to manage its portfolio of running Stadia going forward. They're going to give a bigger cut to developers and publishers. They're going to set up an affiliate marketing type of thing. There was different things happening, and they were announced by Stadia themselves. Also, the white labeling thing is a big deal, and this is part of key of I'm going to talk about today. But the big thing that we ended up getting, the biggest information we ended up getting is the porting tool. Now, last year, a lot of people really thought when Stadia was going to close Stadia Games and Entertainment, they thought that Stadia was instead taking the money and using it from those first-party studios, or from their first-party studio that they had. They were going to take that money and instead invested in getting, AAA games from other developers and publishers. I was on record at that time last year saying I was not convinced that was going to happen. Nowhere did Stadia themselves say that was going to happen. A lot of people assumed that was what was going to happen, and I was on record saying, yeah, that could be a possibility, but I'm not convinced that's exactly what's going to happen. I think what ended up becoming a result of that was the investment went towards porting tools, which they've talked about extensively now, twice, back in 2021 and now this year in 2022. And again, this is going to be key. And the cool thing is, I was going to make this podcast before a recent Forbes article came out. An interview with Dom Zimring, I might be butchering his last name, and he mentioned on there, and let me see if I can pull up the quote, give me a second. He writes, "For industry publishers, we know that the platform porting costs can be a major blocker. This is why we've invested in developing tools to minimize engineering costs and time to launch, so that instead of months, it can take just weeks to get players in the game. This was a primary focus for our team, and we're happy to have delivered here." So right there, you can now see that instead of taking months, it can just take weeks to get a game ported. Now, as we all know, that Immersive Stream for Games, the white labeling company, whatever you want to name them, the white labeling feature, all that's using Stadia tech. And so that translates to Stadia and games being developed for Stadia. Again, this is very key. So I want you guys to understand this. Now, one thing that a lot of you may not have realized, that so far in 2022, a ton of the games that have been developed for this year that have come out, and I'm not sure where we're at. I don't know if we're like at 20 games so far, and we still need like 80 games left or 30 games. It hasn't been a ton of games that have dropped this year so far. And again, we're halfway through 2022. A lot of these games, I don't know if it's a half, but a lot of them have come from the new porting tools. What a lot of people might not know, this might be news to some of you, is that only a select few of the publishers and developers had access to these porting tools, because it's all been like in testing. They've only had access for a little bit. Now, here is some information that I don't know that a lot of people know about. Actually, I don't think it's been public. This is something that I received about a month ago. The end of April is when I got this. I got a message from a friend who I know is watching. Shout out to him. He told me, and I have to be very careful. I have to be pretty vague here. He told me, and he's from, let's just say, I'm just going to say this. He's from a prominent developer / publisher. That's all I'm going to say. He's from a prominent, so this is somebody it's not an indie studio. It's just from a prominent developer / publisher. He told me at the end of April, they had just got access to porting tools. They had just got access to it. And this is key, because so far, the games that have come out in 2022 were from developers who had early access to these tools for testing purposes. So essentially, Google had not released these tools to everybody. So you see what happened here with the recent deal with the Immersive Stream for Games and Control being on AT&T. If the tools were just released in April, my guess, and this is just me, now this is me speculating, my guess is that they had gotten access around the end of April, and within weeks they ended up getting Control ready for AT&T, and it took no time essentially to get that up and running on AT&T. So so essentially the exclusive info is that only just a month ago, these porting tools have now been accessible to all developers and publishers. That is huge. Why is that huge? Because it now means that every single developer and publisher that will make games for Stadia going forward will be using these tools, and it's going to cut the development time to get a game on Stadia. This is why I'm telling you guys that I will be shocked if we don't see the 100 games come out this year. I know there was an interview, and I know Lee from Stadia Source, we were going back and forth on Twitter. He mentioned, the interview at the end of 2020, where it was mentioned that 2022 was all but set. And I still believe that a lot of the games for this year have already been set. But I believe what has happened is that Stadia had said, or Google had told everybody, hey, we have these tools. They're going to cut your time, your development costs. It's going to be easier for you. Wait till we get these tools out to the public, and then this will be easy on your end, and you can go ahead and get your game on Stadia. And I think that is why we are at where we at right now. Very few games this year, very few announcements, very few a lot of things this year pretty much. And again, and I think some of this information is public. I don't just at the top of my head, I can't remember which games so far that have come in 2022 have been using these tools, but I know some of the games that have come out for Pro that are new, and quite a few of these titles. So this is really significant, and it makes a lot of sense because we've been seeing job listings for over like a year now talking about these porting tools and how they've been essentially hiring for engineers. And for them, a lot of the money that I think people, and don't get me wrong, I think there was a lot of money that was cut last year when they closed Stadia Games and Entertainment. I think a lot of the money was actually used more on getting these porting tools as quick as possible, like get that part of it done, and then how that would be very valuable for both Stadia and immersive stream for games. So right there, guys, if you're wondering what's all this gibberish I'm talking about, if you're able to make it to where you make a game for Stadia and it only takes a couple of weeks and it's less of a hassle, this is a positive for tons of things going forward. Now Google can convince other big publishers, developers, hey, it takes almost no effort. It takes almost no effort to get your game onto our platform. Go ahead and do it. It'll make it easier to convince AA publishers and AAA publishers and indie developers to continue to bring their game over, because now these tools have been very, what's the word I'm looking for? They've been refined to get this process done quicker, cost a lot less, and of course integrate within Stadia's ecosystem, which is of course setting up achievements and friends list and all that. So it has taken this much time to really refine these tools and get them to the point now where it is accessible to everybody. So again, at the end of April, they made the announcement of these porting tools back in 2021. So I just want to set that stage for you guys to understand why I think it's been slow. This is my theory on why everything has just been so slow. They have focused on these tools, and that's mostly it. So let's now talk about what I think the future of what all this is going to mean, what this means for Stadia. And this is really where I am definitely speculating and what I think is going to happen. And I just want to set the stage here. I don't know if people understand that cloud gaming is a 1% market. I've talked about this a lot on my live streams, a lot, like too much. A lot of people don't understand is that it's such a small market right now that if you're a dedicated cloud platform, so if you're like a GeForce Now, if you're a Luna, if you're a Stadia, right now it's a little bit hard to convince publishers to put in the time to get their game onto your platform or your service. I've talked about this before where I have said that this isn't just a Stadia problem. I have heard from other services where they are, and this is coming from them, and I'm paraphrasing, they are constantly putting in the effort to reach out to big publishers, big developers, and trying to negotiate a deal. We're not talking about Stadia, we're talking about other services. They're trying to make those deals all the time. It's not like they're sitting back, not doing anything, and they're just kind of like, just not even trying. They're hoping that they come to them and they knock on their door to get their game on their service. No, they are effortlessly trying to get big games on their services. It just, these things take time. It's not I show up to the door, give me your game, sure, and then that's it. It's like it's got to go to different people, different tiers of people, and there's just a lot that goes into it. It's a very complicated thing. So when we think about Stadia, I think Stadia has been very much focused on working on those tools. I'm not sure how much they've been working on, reaching out to publishers to get games, and I'm not going to talk about any games or anything that I'm aware of this year, but like I said before earlier in this podcast, this is the year where I have heard a lot less. What I think going forward for cloud gaming specifically, especially for Stadia, is that as they continue to expand to more countries, we've seen hints of them expanding Stadia this year. As you see GeForce Now and Luna's expand, it's going to be a lot easier for these entities to go to EA or go to who else can 2K, one of those guys, any of the big publishers or anyone else, and say, hey guys, it takes no time to get your game on our service, and we have now this many users using the service. And by then, those entities will come back and say, all right, sure, we'll get our game on there, and no, it'll just give us access to new markets. And what a lot of people don't understand, and this isn't to, and I hope I don't come off like I'm a know-it-all or anything like that, but there's a lot of countries where they cannot get their hands on an Xbox, they cannot get their hands on a PlayStation, a Nintendo Switch. Cloud gaming is going to be huge in those markets. I actually, over the 2 years of covering my channel, I've gotten comments almost on a daily basis. When is it coming to my country? Because cloud gaming is kind of the gateway for a lot of gamers who love gaming, who at the moment play a lot of mobile games, want to play AAA games. They want to play console quality games. They want to play PC quality games. So when these services, and this isn't just a Stadia thing, expand to these markets, what you're going to see is a lot more new people come into gaming that have never been able to access it before. And the reason they haven't been able to access it is because there'll be tariffs, or those countries aren't very rich and they can't afford to buy an Xbox. Not only that, when these consoles actually get to these countries, they're marked up way above just the normal value, just MSRP. A PlayStation 5 right now will cost $499 if you can even get access to it. Imagine other countries that can't even get access. Even worse for them, it'll be $1,500 to get a PlayStation 5 somewhere else. And I have lived this. This is something I have lived. I've been in Mexico. I spent a year of my life over there, and this is something that I saw that was a constant problem. A normal console was marked up double the price when I was down in Mexico. They're already a poorer country compared obviously to the United States. So a lot of people aren't going to have the money. So where does something like cloud gaming fit in that? Well, it fits perfectly. Now, we can argue about internet. We can really get deep into the cloud gaming future. I'm convinced that cloud gaming is going to take quite a few years to really take off. At the moment, it's a 1% market in all of gaming. 1%. It is so low that it is hard to convince publishers and developers right now to get that AAA game onto the service. Think about this for a second. If you're Amazon, if you're Google, if you're any of these big entities right now, if you're Nvidia, is it super smart to spend a ton of money, to spend millions of dollars to get a game on a service if there's really no player base to actually consume it, and you're not really convincing normal gamers to leave their Xbox, to leave their PlayStation, to leave their PC to join the cloud gaming? Not really. This thing is going to take a lot of time, and it's very much, to me, reminiscent of how we've seen TV services, streaming services like Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus and all these take their time it took time to phase out DVDs and physical stuff to eventually be adopted. And the truth is that there's still some technical barriers as well. Internet still needs to get better all around the world. I personally can't even use my 5G and play off a game very well. It's very spotty. So there's just a lot of limitations that still exist. So right now, cloud gaming is just not quite there yet. So if you're a pure cloud gamer, I think your best chance to play every single big AAA game is to jump from service to service that actually has your game. If that's Xbox Cloud Gaming, all right. If that's GeForce Now, okay. I think that's one positive about cloud gaming too, is that you're not necessarily tied to one system if there's a certain game you want to play. And that's key. Going back to Stadia, I think that their focus has been completely, let's focus on the tools. Let's get this thing as seamless as possible. Let's really refine our platform. We're starting to see UI changes to the store. Let's continue to build our library as we continue to expand into markets. And now we have all these games that we can present to people. Let's let this tech get a lot better in general. Let's Stadia get better, as in the tech itself. Let's have the internet continue to get better. 5G will be more available. More countries will have faster internet over the years. So there's a lot of that going on. Essentially, my message here is that as a whole, this isn't just a Stadia problem, but as a whole, this is going to take so many years to really take off. I have even changed my mindset. I think on the very conservative, I've said it's going to take 5 years before you really start to see. And I think even the Newzoo projections essentially said maybe by 5 years we'll see this at triple So maybe you'll see cloud gaming be 3% or 5%, which, think about that. That's still not a lot. I have said on record now that this, I think, is going to take almost 10 years before, maybe somewhere between 7 to 10 years before you really start to see cloud gaming, because completely be, a very dominant and very force in the market, in the gaming market. And I'm guessing by that time, 5G, everything, internet all around the world, everything will just be so much smoother. The tech itself from all these cloud gaming services will just be that much better. And it'll just be, we're already to the point where I can't tell that I'm cloud gaming, whether that's Stadia or GeForce Now or even Luna. We're already there, but we do have very good internet. We have very good, devices that we're streaming these things on. So this is just gonna all get better, but it's a slow process, guys. This is ultimately the message, and I think Stadia, in my opinion, has relayed that message. They're not gonna directly tell you that, hey, we're taking a step back as we continue to let this thing grow. We're gonna continue to let this our game library grow. But right now we're taking a step back, and that would be, not a good thing for them to say, but I'm telling you, because this isn't inside information. This is just by their actions. So I know a lot of people have been wondering going forward, what's going to happen? Well, let me answer the one question about big AAA games, and this might be it here. But I really see that more AAA games will eventually come, but it's just that process of Stadia going, all right, we have now fixed these porting tools. We've now made this easier. Come join our platform. We have this many users. We have different ways you can get monetized. People can buy the game. They can use it through Stadia Pro. And I think eventually you will see a lot more games. I just don't know how that's going to look in the years ahead, because a lot of the past years for the big games for Stadia went out and bought those games onto the platform. And I think it was a good investment initially, because going forward, when you head into these new markets, you are going to have games like Resident Evil Village and, Rainbow Six Extraction or Rainbow Six Siege, games that are very popular. PUBG is another great one that I know it's big in the India market. And those, when you show up to these countries and you have these games on here, they'll make a mark. They'll make a mark for sure. So ultimately, guys, this is all a slow process. And going forward for Stadia, again, just a month ago, those porting tools have been accessible for everybody. Fully expect to see the 100 games come this year. If it doesn't, then hey, we're going to have another one of these and we'll be calling them out. I already issued a message to Dom and I said, hey, let's have an interview where we talk about Stadia's future, because all I can do on my end is speculate. I don't know exactly what's going on. If Dom wants to hop on this podcast or he wants to join me on a formal video and we break it down and we say, hey, what's your plans for Stadia in the future? Don't let me be the guy who's just speculating over here. Tell us what's going to happen. Let me know. But for now, all I can do is speculate. I think Stadia will look to make more deals, and now they can come to the table and say, hey, it takes almost no time to get your game on Stadia. You have nothing to lose. And I think that's the message. That's what's going to happen going forward. What types of games we're going to see? That's the question that I have, as well as you guys do as well. So as I always tell you guys, vote with your wallet. If you're unhappy with what's going on, I totally get your unhappiness. I'm personally still a massive fan of Stadia. I'm still using it. It's going to be something I'm going to continue to use. I'm also going to use GeForce Now. I'll dabble with Amazon Luna. I'll dabble with Xbox Cloud Gaming. I'm going to dabble with all this stuff. But for me, Stadia is still where it's at. And yeah, that's all I can say. Let me know down below, guys, what you guys think of this. This was episode 3 of Cloud Gaming Unfiltered podcast. These have been a lot of fun. If you have any questions about anything else, write them down below for the next podcast, as I have some great stuff. By the way, if you've left questions before, I'll be answering them in a future podcast. I'm Sunny, and as always, I'll see you guys in the cloud.